Welcome to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. This episode is part of our Indies Introduced series, where we spotlight debut authors handpicked by booksellers from around the country. In each episode, a bookseller from the Indies Introduced panel will interview the author of a debut title featured in our program.
Hello, I am Mara Luther from Chapter 1 Bookstore in Hamilton, Montana, and joining me today is Susan Metallo, who is a young adult author and librarian. Her debut novel, Reasons to Hate Me, was an Indie Next Kids title and Indies Introduced Kids selection, and won the SCBWI Work in Progress Award and the Tallahassee Writers Association Seven Hills Literary Contest in the YA category. Whew. In addition to these honors, her work has been recognized by Book Pipeline and published in Ladybug Cricket, the Seven Hills Review, and Publishers Weekly. She lives in Albuquerque with her husband, her children, and an 80-pound bulldog who fervently believes she will fit on your lap. Find Susan online at susanmetallo.com. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Mara. It's so good to talk to you.
I'm so excited. This was my favorite of all the kids Indies introduced, and so I'm so excited that I get to be the one to interview you.
Thank you. I'm so excited. You're a superstar in our house because when you called to tell me about Indies Introduce, everyone in my house was so excited. And my 9-year-old actually made a poster being like, Yay, Mara! Mara liked Susan's book. So.
That is awesome because, of course, to booksellers, authors are the superstars. So I feel very honored that I'm on a poster.
Oh, well, no, to us authors, it's definitely you guys who are out there supporting and championing our work. So we're very grateful for you.
Excellent. This interview is off to a great start. Um, so I wanted to just sort of jump in. I think one of the things that we all talked about this book is that how much we love Jess's voice, right? Like Jess as a person, as a character. And I was just curious, when you were writing, did Jess come through exactly how she sounds right now? Or was there a lot of tweaking that happened to really give her that punchy voice that we love so much?
I mean, the honest answer is it's a mix of both. Actually, the voice was the thing that started the novel for me. I had been writing something different, and just in my free time, I was doom scrolling, as you do, and I came across a news article about a murder, and the murder was filmed by a woman on her cell phone, and that evidence was submitted to the police. And so I read this whole article. I looked down at the comments, and the top comment was about how in the first few seconds of the video, the woman yells at her daughter, "So you shouldn't believe this video." And I thought that was the most surreal thing I'd ever seen. And it really reminded me of a lot of the victim blaming and the way that women and people of all marginalized genders really get picked on and picked out for these little things in our lives that have nothing to do with anything in order to make excuses for the bad actions of more powerful people, usually more powerful men. And so I was in this sort of pit of feminist rage, and I sat down at my computer and I opened a Word document. I titled it, "Why No One Will Believe Me If I Ever Witness a Murder." And I started to type this story about a true thing that I really did one time, which involved a cake. And if you haven't read the book yet, I will not spoil it for you because it's in there. But that was a really true thing that I did when I was a little older than the character in this book. I was 23 and in graduate school. And it does not show me in the best light because it is not only completely ridiculous, but it's also affects other people. And I never apologized because I couldn't stop laughing because it was so funny, but also I felt bad. And so I was writing down this story, and I think because of all the feminist rage and the context of seeing news story after news story of victim blaming and all this kind of stuff, the voice that came out was not my voice. It was a lot more performative and sort of, I don't know what the right word is. Aggressive feels negative, but it was very pointed and sharp and not necessarily how I would tell the story to my friends. And I just kind of loved having that voice. I love playing with that voice and that sort of angry performative part of myself. Um, and when I sat down to write the book, which you can probably see a parallel in the title as well, Reasons to Hate Me. And then each chapter is another blog post of a story from her life that is framed as a reason to hate her, but it's not actually. There's that cognitive dissonance there between why people get angry at us for making normal human mistakes and for being human beings, and use that as a reason to hate and attack and blame and all of this stuff that's going on in the background. So, really, it was that voice and that structure that kicked off the whole book for me. And then, the boring part as a writer is then you write the whole book and you have to look at the place where the voice is strongest, see what you did on the sentence level, what punctuation, what syntax, what diction, and then go through the whole book and make sure the voice is consistent and that you're using those same choices. So, it was definitely a combination of serendipity and intentionality. But it started with this sort of playful thing that I just typed out on my computer.
I like that because I think we all have those voices that don't often have a way to come out, but they're always
Yeah,
in our heads and they're in us. So that's very cool that were able to find the avenue, the spot for it.
yeah.
Um, I think I know the answer to this, but I really appreciate your supporting characters. And
Mm.
I think sometimes when there's such a strong main character voice, sometimes the supporting characters don't really get their own sort of strong voices. And
Mm.
so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. Like, how important are the supporting characters to you as a reader and as a writer? And kind of how did they come to you?
Well, they're so important to me as a reader and really have been my whole life. I imagine that booksellers may be similar in this, that I felt like I would get immersed in books and the characters were all my friends. And
Mhm.
because I was looking at the book through the eyes of the main character, the characters that were my friends were the supporting characters, right? I was very into the Alana books as a young teenager and older
Okay.
teenager, and to be honest, now. And all the different knights and the whole gang, like the group of thieves, I would pretend that I was hanging out with them when I would go on hikes in the woods or when I would play. uh do you remember playing Hearts on the computer, like when they had the Hearts
Oh,
community? And I
yeah.
would name the other like phantom computer characters. I would name them after characters from books that I was playing cards with. And it usually wasn't the protagonist, it was the secondary characters, because those
Mhm.
were the ones that I felt like were my good friends. And I think when I write, I also want to give my protagonist and my readers that group of people, and to fill out the world into something that feels real and feels homey and fun, and like you're entering not just this one character's head, but you're entering a whole community and a whole environment. So I do pay a lot of attention when I write to those secondary characters. I do the same thing I did with Jess's voice in terms of going through reading all their dialogue lines, making sure that they have consistent voices that are coming through and are distinct from all of the other characters so that they feel real and alive. It's this kind of nebulous thing when we talk about voice and about characters coming off the page or being alive. But, the reality is that it comes down to all of those little tiny details that you put into the text. And so that could be little quirks, things that, a secondary character does, like the character of Nick in the book, Emily's girlfriend, Nick, gets very excited. And so she'll say things 3 times. Like she'll say, "It's so, so, so nice to meet you." And that creates a voice in your head, because if you imagine someone who's saying, "It's so nice to meet you," versus "It's so, so, so nice to meet you," that immediately gives you a feeling of how she talks and who she is and even what her face looks like. She's so excited. So I try to do that for all of the characters, even the ones who have small moments in the book, just so that it feels like a complete world and a complete school community, complete friend group.
Yeah. Yeah, I so appreciate that too. And I think you're right. I think when I imagine myself as friends with people, it's those supporting characters that are the ones I want to hang out with.
Yeah.
Um, so here's the nitty-gritty. Were you in drama in high school?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Okay.
So
Awesome. I'm so excited. So was
you
I. It's the only thing I lettered in, which is like the main
yes,
thing.
same. I have my varsity letter in theater.
Me
I'm very proud
too.
of it.
I am too. I was like, this was it. Um, so did you have a favorite play? Were you on stage? Were you on crew? Did you have a favorite
Uh,
role? Like, what do you remember from it?
oh my gosh. I remember a lot, and I put a lot of it into the book that I remember. Stage right, orgy couch, real thing. But it's I guess I did a little bit of everything. I did some acting. I was not great at acting. I did theater because it was fun, not because I was good at it. So I did a lot of um a crew stuff, box office. I'm a musician also, so I did play in the pit sometimes for
Oh,
productions, and that was always very fun. And my one like major role, lead role, I guess, I was Sally Brown in You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, which was fun. It was a good time. I think probably my favorite production that we did as a school was we did Cabaret, and the director
wow.
really like played up the anti-Nazi stuff to the point that like the Nazis were terrifying, and about half the audience left at intermission, and we were so proud. We were like, we scared the audience away, guys. We did so great. So, yeah, there were a lot of fun times in theater, eating vending machine dinner and just feeling like you owned the school. I don't know if you felt this way, Mara, but like being at school after hours gives you a real sense of power and ownership of the space.
Mhm.
It's like the jocks are gone. It's just you guys,
We
sock
run
sliding
through
down
the
the hall.
halls. Oh yeah. Yeah, it was great. I was Lucy in your
Oh man,
so right there with you.
so cool. Yes.
Um, and I think for drama nerds, that part of the book really does come out. So it's a great one for kids who are in theater or speech and debate, all of those kind of groups where you kind of collect all of us who don't belong anywhere else. Readers often fall into those categories too. So
Yeah.
I
And
appreciated that part.
yeah, I wanted it to really be a book for the theater nerds and the misfits. And I pushed really hard, and my editor was really supportive of this to make sure that the references to theater terminology and to plays and things were not treated like a foreign language that we stopped and explained every time it showed up, because I didn't want this to be a book where theater kids were just rolling their eyes the whole time, like, oh, this old lady's like, old lady splaining to me what
What
theater
language
is when I
is
clearly know. So I tried to really make that part of it extremely authentic for the kids.
Yeah, very cool. I think that's definitely going to come through. And then the parts of the book that you wrote as a script too,
Yeah.
I really appreciated. Were there parts you write it as a blog, and then
Mhm.
there's script in there, and then there are parts that are not necessarily in the blog. They're sort of more in the moment, in the moment writing. How did you choose those moments when you didn't want to be looking backward necessarily? You wanted it to be sort of more action driven.
That's a great question. I started out thinking it was going to be more of a all looking back, and all these little funny anecdotes. And I realized that that wasn't giving enough room for Jess as a character to grow and change throughout the book, which is so critical in YA, like giving that main character a chance to be this dynamic figure that the kids can read along with. And that, frankly, I keep saying it's for the kids. It's for me too. I read so much YA. Maybe you do as well. But
Totally.
But I need to process through these moments with teenagers. I think possibly in part because when I was a teenager, we did not have books about neurodivergent protagonists that felt respectful and authentic. We did not have books about, queer protagonists that were nuanced, just normal books, kids going through their normal lives, not, sort of these intense issue books.
Right.
And so I think for me now, reading books with representation is so important to me as a reader. And I think I'm stuck in that YA phase where I just need to sort of process through all this stuff I didn't get to process through as a teenager. But yeah, so that was really the motivation for having some blog chapters where it reads as though it's happening right now. Even though that was a little bit of a suspension of disbelief, because if she's, say, describing today's creative writing class and having dialogue from today, uh, it requires the reader to take a little bit of a leap and say, okay, I I know that she's framing this as a blog. Would a kid actually write down their entire day with dialogue in a blog post? Maybe not, but I'll accept it from Jess because she's a little weird and writerly and out there. And so it was just the moments that felt like something pivotal was going to happen in her real life in that day needed to be in the present tense. And then a lot of the sort of interior uh, exploration could happen from past events,
Mm.
or you as the reader could come to understand something that was happening in Jess's life from past events. But yeah, it was really important for me to show her going actually through her day and through her year and changing in real time rather than as looking back on it.
Right. Yeah, I think it did help. Like you say, when we're reflecting on something, we think of it in a very different way and then when we're experiencing in the moment, it's all coming at us.
Yeah.
So we're gonna
Yeah.
react in a really different way. So I thought you did a really good job. It worked for me. I was like,
Oh,
yeah,
good.
we're in real life.
I'm
Um,
glad.
you talked about seeing representation in teen books, which I also think is so important, and I was so excited to see it. And then also just having books where teens are making mistakes and
Yeah.
then trying to like fix it. I think when I was a teen, if I made a mistake, it felt like the end.
Mm.
Like, and now you've made this mistake, and now you just must go on with your life. Like, I didn't get a lot of practice at like making amends or apologizing. And so I feel like in your book, you let your readers really kind of practice that in some awkward social, emotional ways.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's so critical and such a huge part of this particular book that, you know, mistakes can hurt people, but if we make mistakes and then we shut down and retreat into a shell, there's no growth, there's no possibility for healing and for
Mhm.
moving forward. And so a lot of this book is just figuring out how to break out of her shell and really make positive strides in all of her relationships, which is what really drives the plot is, Jess is figuring out how to be okay with herself and how to forgive herself. And Jess is trying to make things okay with Chloe. But there's also Jess and her mom, Jess and her sister, Jess and Cameron, her best friend that she is decently good to, but still makes mistakes in that relationship. And all of these relationships sort of form this arc together, this intertwined character arc for Jess, where she figures out how to take small steps forward, even with the bullies as well. In the end,
Right.
she figures out for some of the bullies that's not possible, but for some of them, she's able to start admitting where she's made mistakes, and they're able to start admitting where they made mistakes.
Yeah, I appreciated that so much. Um, Going back to drama, I know sometimes finding the right cover for your book can be kind of dramatic. How was it for you? How do you like the cover?
I love the cover. I think it turned out perfect. Um, it was a long road to get there. I think sometimes it is, and with a book like this, it was sort of hard to pinpoint. There wasn't um like an obvious symbol, to put on the cover of the book, or, even knowing what characters, if we were going to put characters on the cover, there are so many characters, as we've talked about, would it just be Jess? Would it be Jess and the bullies? Would it be Jess and Chloe? Like, what would be happening? And I love what the designer came up with, which was using the smashed cake as a metaphor for the smashed friendship and putting that cake on the front of the book. And it was just very bold and very bright, and the title is huge. I think the title is very fun and a good selling point for the book. So we wanted that to be the most prominent aspect of the cover. It was actually kind of funny because of the stock photo they found for the cake it's a vanilla cake with pink icing. And in the book, and if you've read the arc, the cake is chocolate. But we changed it for the final version. And so it's really, it changed a couple things in the scene with having hot pink buttercream instead of the chocolate, and some lines about dogs and squirrels had to change a little bit. And, it's interesting how something that seems like, oh, this is just the package, this is just the gloss we're putting on, it just becomes part of the book, it becomes part of the story. It affects the text, it affects how readers are going to interact with the book. And so I'm just really happy that we found something this wonderful to put on the front.
I appreciate that you made it match too, because as a reader, if the cover art doesn't match what's happening, like if they haven't read it and they don't know what the character looks like,
Yeah.
annoys me. I'm like, that's not what they look like.
I know. Well, that's why I'm always hesitant about characters on the front of books too. I get a little anxious about that because I'm like, what if the reader doesn't want to picture the character that way? Like, what if the
Mhm.
reader pictures the character differently? I know I've had that experience watching movies that are based on books, be like, that's not what she's supposed to look like. And so I think that can be true with covers. So I think we're pretty safe with the cake, though. I
Yeah.
think the cake's good.
Yeah, good choice. It's gonna really pop on the shelf. All right. Thank you. I just nosy and I want to know what you've been reading or what you've been loving this year.
Oh, yes. So, uh, plug for my fellow Indies Introduce authors. Last week, I read Joanne Yee's book, All the Tomorrows After.
Yes.
And you know how sometimes you read a book and it's so good that you're not okay after you read it? Like, that is how I was with that book. I was sitting on my couch staring into nothingness. My husband was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "No, I'm not, because this book was too good. Like, I don't even know how to talk to you right now." It's
Mhm.
just still in my head and it is never going to leave. That was wonderful. And then I read the arc for Cassandra Ramos Gomez's Lost on Doll Island that comes out next week. And that was super creepy. And I was in love with that one. So I've just been trying to read everyone's books before they come out because
Same.
it's just a lot of fun to support each other and read these great stories.
Yeah, it's like you're part of a little club.
I know, I love
You all had your first
it.
book together. It's like
Yeah.
a drama club all over
Yes, it
again.
is. They're my supporting characters, and I'm their supporting character, depending on whose perspective you're looking through.
Right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been very delightful.
Yeah, I really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much again for reading the book and selecting the book, but also just for chatting.
Yeah, have a great rest of the day. And
Thanks.
congratulations on the
Thank
release.
you.
Thank you for listening to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Additional educational resources can always be found on the ABA site at www.bookweb.org. Happy reading!